You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Want to taste a flight of rare agave spirits at Rick Bayless's award-winning Bar Sotano? Or on La Barca Cantina, the storied taco boat touring New York's Hudson River? Or do you want to drink a special lager from the Maine Beer Company? Or how about coffee? Want to start your morning with a Mexican roast from the genius crew at Dark Matter? Well, you can do all those things and support Sacred in the process. Sacred is a not-for-profit that helps improve quality of life in the rural Mexican communities that make heritage agave spirits. We ask Mezcalerixes what problems they have, what solutions they imagine to resolve those problems, and what resources they need to enact those solutions. Then, we go out and try to find those resources for them. All of those businesses I just mentioned, Bar Sotano, La Barca Cantina, Maine Beer Company, and Dark Matter Coffee, all of them have special offerings on right now that support Sacred. To learn more about these supportive, creative ventures, visit sacredagave.org/fun. That's sacredagave.org/fun, because real fun is also doing real good. I'm Lou Bank.
And I'm Lou Bank from the past.
And this is Agave Road Trip, the critically acclaimed award-winning podcast that helps Gringex bartenders better understand agave spirits, and rural Mexico. You can't log on to a Facebook tequila group without seeing Cristalino tequila derided, abused, and generally treated as some kind of punchline. But do those user groups reflect the average consumer? Does the average consumer matter as much as the more highly engaged consumers that populate these online groups? And does consumption itself matter as much as cultural heritage? That's what I'll be discussing with Lou.
Lou from the past.
Right, Lou from the past, in this episode of Agave Road Trip. But first, let's start with the definition of Cristalino tequila. Here's what Jaime Salas of Proximo and Jose Cuervo says.
Cristalino is an aged tequila that has been filtered through charcoal so that we can essentially remove all the impurities and imperfections from the oak, right? And we could probably get into that a little bit later. But clearly the intention here is to retain all the beautiful, bright, sort of bright notes that Blancos are classically known for, and retain all that complexity and all of that depth that is sort of lent to us through the aging process. So think of a tequila that's been polished to this beautiful, delicate brightness where all the beautiful agave notes are really pronounced, with a backdrop of all those things we love and appreciate from oak casking, essentially.
Well, yeah, of course he'd say that, President Lou. Jaime works for a company that sells a lot of Cristalino. Polished, beautiful, delicate brightness?
Right. He does sell a lot of Cristalino, as do all the other tequila companies that offer Cristalino. In fact, according to Jaime, if Cristalino were a recognized expression, it would be second best-selling in Mexico behind Reposado.
But it's not a recognized expression.
No. Cristalino does not appear in the norma that defines what tequila is, NOM 006. That's a frustration for someone like Juan Eduardo Nunez of Tequila El Viejito. Okay, let's talk about the Cristalino.
It's the stupidest thing the industry can do. Not only because you're aging and then stripping it away, so why do it? Because then you're making your tequila so neutral that you're adding flavors afterwards. So that's just the stupidest thing you could do. But forget about that. If you want it and it's a market for it, okay, let's go. But let's put it into the law first, because it does not exist in law. And when I just said, I'm very traditionalist and very respectful, and I will defend tequila like hell. We should not be making cristalinos if it's not in the norma. Period. It's not. It doesn't exist in law.
Right.
And I think it's very dangerous for tequila producers to start doing whatever the hell we want Yeah. That's the reason my father was involved in creating the CRT. And that's the reason the federal government had inspectors. Because the word tequila is owned by the Mexican government. And we are bound to comply with the regulations. Like it or not. There's stupid things in the law, in the Norma, which says we can't use recycled bottles. It has to be new bottles. And that's stupid as hell. But it's the law, and we should all comply with it, like it or not. Because when a tequila producer starts to do whatever the hell he wants, then you'll lose your industry.
Okay, I'm with this wanted Wardo guy. Can't wait to meet him.
Wait, you haven't met him yet? Exactly how past Lou are you?
I'm Lou 2015.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're the Lou who told David Hammond that mezcal should never be aged in wood, that it's a desecration?
Yeah. You'd only add the notes that a wooden barrel introduces to your mezcal if you don't like the taste of the mezcal.
Okay, got it. So then you don't even really like tequila, right?
Blanco's okay, I guess. But yeah, the tequila aged in barrels is clearly bad tequila.
So when Wanted Wardo suggests that the Cristalino process is, hang on, let me just check the transcript. You're aging and then stripping it away. So if the aging is stripped away, then maybe you'd actually like Cristalino?
If they aged in wood in the first place, it couldn't be very good, so no.
Oh, young Lou. So, newsflash, I like Cristalinos.
Well, you're an idiot.
Not the first time I've been called that on this podcast, but the first time I've called myself that, I think. Anyway, that's how this episode began. I was surprised to find I actually like Cristalinos, like more than I tend to like the average tequila. In fact, it's the rare Cristalino that I don't enjoy.
This is starting to feel like one of those time travel movies where the young man is disappointed in his future self.
Hey, you're not so young, but listen, I have this friend, Chris Maxwell.
Whoa! I eventually become friends with Chris Maxwell?
Hey, he's just a dude.
No, man, he's Tequila Geek royalty.
Okay, yeah, that, and Chris hates Cristalino, so much so, in fact, I was gonna call this episode Cristalino, like with the Chris part of Cristalino spelled the way Chris spells his name, Khrys, but that seemed too inside baseball, so I didn't. But I did taste Chris out on 14 Cristalino expressions.
And?
Hey, Roy, can you run the Chris Maxwell montage?
So number one, it's got a little diffuser jive nose going on, a little chemicalness happening. There's no character to it. Why? This is great when you're 19 years old and you have a palate of a 5-year-old.
So number two?
Number two, yeah. It's got a little bit more character. It's a little bit drier. So it's got some character of alcohol to it. Oh my God! Like it's getting my palate is getting sweeter and sweeter, and like it's intensifying, and like it's like what's the chemical fat that's in cake icing, the cheap icing that you get at the store that's left over. It's not even Crisco. It's like it's intensifying, and it's like there's a fake sweetness of vanilla. God. But there's so much additive bullshit on top of this, and I don't care what distillate this is. I don't care if it's cognac. Oh my God. Whew, Lordy. That's 4 down, 10 more to go. That tastes like it could have been from a traditional producer. It's a little overtly sweet, not as sweet as what we had before, but the underlying base of the distillate doesn't offend me. Okay, 7 is not offensive. Number 6 and 7 actually kind of remind me of being in walking along the streets of tequila, not through the distilleries, but through everybody who's selling cantaritos. So like everybody has like these, like, you know, except for a couple of places, have like these mass produced, you know, products. You know, you're limited to those things, and you're like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm gonna use that. That's my best choice in the situation. And yeah, so it just reminds me of like my choices of going down the streets of tequila to have cantaritos after visiting distilleries. Yeah, they're starting to get samey. Not offensive nose. Blah blah blah. It's way too sweet. Nine's odd. It's sweet. It's kind of like hot tamales. 10 smells, once again, I'm walking down the streets of tequila, not for the distilleries, but no, I don't necessarily. That's not a good. It's a thing. Yes. Okay. Because you don't find quality distillates anymore on those streets, and if you do, I would doubt that the juice inside is legit. I don't know. They're all getting to be samey, and that's the problem with things that go through a diffuser. It ends up being same. There's no terroir. There's no, the idea of like what the water is giving to the product. Like it's, yeah. And then we're going to put it in a barrel for X amount of time. Could be one day. Could be like 10 years. Then we're going to run through a filter and strip everything out. Yes. Okay. It's a new distillate. It's a new day. On the side of my palate is just spiking of sweetness. It's like, you know, I fell in love with tequila because it was of the earth, and it had a story, and it took all of my it would take my palate on a journey, and I don't think that any of this takes my palate on a journey. It's very superficial. It is pop. It is dare I say Beyonce. It's not as offensive. It's not quite as sweet. There is a little bit of bitterness on the back of my palate. Yeah. Is kind of like somebody took a piece of charred toast and ran it across my tongue. Is that I think that's a mezcal. The last one by far was like the most interesting of all things.
Yeah, I So there. He basically hated them, or hated all but that last one anyway. But I'll also say this was at his request a blind tasting. I think maybe he thought I was going to sneak something in there, something more traditional. So maybe that last one was just, you know, Chris hedging his bets.
If Chris says Cristalinos suck, they must suck, right?
Maybe to him, and maybe to Juan Eduardo, and maybe to the tequila geeks who populate the Facebook groups. But I've got this other friend, Chuck Cowdery.
Wait, Chuck Cowdery, the guy the New York Times described as the dean of American whiskey journalism?
Yeah, that's Chuck. So I ran Chuck through a bunch of the Cristalinos, not all 14 that I ran Chris through, but 8 of them. Roy, can you run that sound blanket, please?
What I'm getting is a good, ordinary, standard tequila flavor.
Yeah.
If I'm looking for tequila and I'm not looking to be challenged, and I just want to put this to my lips and taste tequila, this does that job. This tastes like tequila. It's fine. I mean, it's perfectly good to drink, but there's nothing interesting in it. There's nothing where I say, I like this. I like this particular tequila. It's creamy. Mm-hmm. It's got some edge to it, but just enough, you know. Mm-hmm. A little black pepper, a little astringency, because it's just the right amount of wood influence, and it's not muddy, it's not confusing, it's not going in different directions. Certainly has flavor. You know, I don't drink a lot of tequila, and when I do, I usually drink a reposado, but I've certainly had blancos and so forth. I don't know that I've had a Cristalino. I don't see this tasting a lot different. I mean, I would certainly say it's close. It's a more flavorful Blanco, but it's not as flavorful as a Reposado. I had noticed on the nose, a lot more fruit than I would have expected from an agave spirit. I'd drink this. I would have no problem. I'll have no problem finishing this in the cup. It's vegetal. I mean, I'm getting, especially compared to the previous one, which was a bit more neutral.
Yeah.
I'm getting more vegetal flavors, more almost grassy flavors. All good. I mean, it definitely tastes green, but green in a good way. I mean, it doesn't taste harsh. It's not off-putting at all. Because there's something in the background there, too, that is kind of sort of creamy, kind of almost chocolatey, or maybe more toward, I'd say more, maybe be more caroby. Nobody eats carob anymore, but I am getting a little bit of carob in it. I guess with this one, I'm kind of almost like, my first thought is, well, what's the point?
So, a mixed bag for the whiskey legend, yeah?
Well, sort of, but none of them was offensive, and some he liked, and that's from a guy who isn't what you'd call a tequila geek, but
is a real spirits connoisseur.
Right. So for a third opinion, I went to my friend Barbara Engelskirchen from the National Museum of Mexican Art. I figured no connection to spirits, tons of connections to Mexican culture. Roy, can you drop that third audio carpet?
I don't love it. I don't think I like it. I like this one. It tastes a little sweeter. There's a little caramelization flavor going on here. I like this one. I don't like this one.
You don't like this one?
No.
Okay.
I like this one. By the scent, I think I'm going to like this one. I don't think I like this one. Nope. I like this one. I don't really like this one.
You don't like this one?
No. I like this one. I think I'm ruining the order. I like this one.
Oh.
Ooh, it's another one that smells like marshmallow. Toasted marshmallow. I don't like this one. After sip number 2, I still don't like it.
So for Barbara, it was basically 50-50. And with Chuck, he liked more than half, like most of them, in fact. So to that question, I wanted to start with, do the Cristalino haters on the tequila Facebook groups, the people like my friend Chris Maxwell, do they reflect the average consumer? Well, clearly not. Which begs the second and third questions. Does the average consumer matter as much as the more highly engaged consumers that populate these online tequila groups? And does consumption itself matter as much as cultural heritage?
I'd say the average consumer matters if you're a bar or liquor store and all you care about is your profit margin. But if you care about cultural heritage, those highly engaged consumers are likely the ones who are pointing the way toward protecting the core values or the integrity of tequila.
So, look, kid, on the one hand, I could argue that the core values and integrity of tequila went out the window when the spirit was commodified back in the late 1800s. But I think that's just too simplistic a way to view this. I don't think this is an either-or situation. I think it's more yes and. Some people like Cristalino, people like me, people like Chuck Cowdery, and even Barbara liked half of what she tasted. That doesn't diminish the more traditional version of tequila that Juan Eduardo makes at El Viejito.
Doesn't it, though? Bars and liquor stores operate on budgets. They don't have bottomless wallets. They don't have infinite space on their back bars and shelves. For every bottle they carry, they're saying no to 10, 20, 100 other bottles. You like Cristalino? Okay. But you and 40 of your friends might be forcing that bar to not stock El Viejito. This guy I worked with at Marvel, he was a marketing consultant, and the guy who helped M&M's grow beyond just plain and peanut.
Oh, yeah, sure. I remember that guy.
Well, he had them create a dozen different kinds of M&Ms back in the 1980s. And the purpose was specifically to take up shelf space, to force smaller candy brands off the shelves and out of the market. Doesn't this do the same?
Well, yeah, but...
As I sit here in 2014, sales of 100% agave tequila look poised to take over mixtos for the first time, which feels like a reversal of the trajectory of tequila specifically, but consumer goods in general, the trajectory that we've been on.
Okay, sure,
Tequila feels like it's trying to move back to its roots, which is the direction we need to head with everything.
Yeah, agreed. However...
And Cristalino feels like it's an attempt to claw back to a commodification trajectory, the trajectory that will lead to a global
Hey, Roy,
collapse.
can you please pull the plug on the time? Yeah, perfect. So, okay, now that we have the room to ourselves, I suppose it's undeniable that where one bottle sits in a store or at a bar, another bottle can't. But it's not as if all bars and liquor stores make decisions in unison. For every Cindy's rooftop that offers Cristalino tequila, there will be a spilt milk that doesn't. I mean, I like Cristalino tequila. I like most every expression I've tasted. And at the same time, I recognize that my consumption patterns create problems. Every convenience in my life is an inconvenience in someone else's life. I don't think we resolve those conflicts by demonizing one thing. I think we need to recognize that everything we consume that isn't from right here, grown and prepared by our own hands, has some level of problem attached to it. We're not going to redirect capitalism overnight, but changing our behaviors in small ways, making manageable changes will, I think, eventually move us in a more sustainable direction.
Actually, present Lou, the truth is...
Roy, can you please lock future Lou out of here too?
Wait, but I have news from the future.
Okay, Lou, room's all yours.
Yeah, but I think I've said all I have to say on the matter. So, thanks, Roy, but I'm going to say that's a wrap for me. But here are some final thoughts. So here's Jaime Salas again from Proximo.
How do you minimize or how do you mitigate, the negative impact on the earth through what you do with a byproduct aside from the gas, right? Las vinazas, for example, the wastewater, right? We have our own treatment plants, right? We want to ensure that the wastewater can be treated and disposed of properly, for example. Again, we talked about the fiber. We produce over, I believe, I forget, it's over 1 million or 2 million tons of it, right? Again, biggest agricultural product in Jalisco. You can imagine all the waste that comes from it. But what do we do with it? How do we ensure that someone else can make use of this product? So we're constantly exploring that. Our distillery is powered 50% of the electricity from renewable resources, for example. So how do we also ensure that not only our systems are in place, but the very tools that we use, the very machinery that we utilize is also imparting a renewable resource or mitigating that negative impact. So for us, it's all about how do we create this circular economy? How do we get from point A to point B? And we see a future where you will be drinking our products in cups made of a byproduct coming from that tequila, right? As you experience personally. But how do we make that for the masses? You can enjoy your Maestro Dobel in a cup made from the bagasse that production process created, for example.
And here's Chris Maxwell one last time.
Dude, I'll drink Malort all day over a Cristalino.
And, thanks, Chris, and Chuck Cowdery.
I like Cristalinos. Yeah, I guess if you don't like something, you call it a derivation. If you do like it, you call it an innovation.
And finally, a word from Barbara Engelskirchen.
I dislike it less than the first one. I don't like it as much as the second one. I would drink it if you gave it to me and it was the only drink, but I prefer the second one.
And last but not least, I'd like to leave us with the immortal words of Sheryl Crow. It's not having what you want. It's wanting what you've got. And we'll call that a wrap. Hasta pronto. You've been listening to Agave Road Trip, the critically acclaimed award-winning podcast that helps Gringex bartenders better understand agave spirits, and rural Mexico. We're blessed with sound engineering by Roy Sierra and a theme song performed by Gabriel Oliveira and Marco Ricos. Sign up to become a road tripper and listen to more episodes at agaveroadtrip.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know. And if you hated it, well, I'm sure you'll let us know that too. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Agave Road Trip. Agave Road Trip is a production of 10 Angry Pit Bulls, Inc. Agave Road Trip is powered by Simplecast. Thank you for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. To subscribe to the Heritage Radio newsletter, enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with Heritage Radio Network on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find Heritage Radio Network at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization using the power of educational storytelling about food to build a more equitable, resilient food system. Heritage Radio Network couldn't do that without support from listeners like you. Become a part of the world's most innovative community today. Subscribe to the shows you like. Tell your friends. And please join the Heritage Radio Network family by becoming a member. To become a member of the Heritage Radio Network, click on the beating heart of our homepage. Heritage Radio Network can become addictive. Programming you hear on Heritage Radio Network might lead you to eat, drink, and listen to more programming on Heritage Radio Network. If you drink, please do not drink and drive. Drink responsibly. Drive responsibly. Eat responsibly too. And listen to Heritage Radio Network responsibly. To listen to Heritage Radio Network responsibly, wear protective earbuds. While wearing protective earbuds, do not drive. Do not walk either. Sit in a comfortable chair. If that comfortable chair has a hard seat, please remember to stretch every 30 minutes. If you stretch every 30 minutes, please stay within your defined stretching capacity. And consult a doctor who specializes in stretching. If you don't have a doctor, maybe Dr. Ryan Acock, the Cocktail MD, can help you out. Thanks for listening. Agave Road Trip out.